Hello everyone, and this is a lesson on Vellum cloth settings. Okay, so I've been making a project which hopefully should release soon, and I needed to make like a cape in that particular project. And I realized I've never really gone very deep into the cloth settings or how to get different types of cloth. Like if you want something relatively smooth or something with more wrinkles, then how do you go about doing that? So I decided to just look things up online, and I found this one link which is quite useful. So if you do a search, this is old, but it still applies for most of it. If you just do a search for this, like Vellum cloth look dev tips, it has some really good settings that you can follow to give you results for at least 3 basic types of cloth, which then you can modify to make like anything out of it. So that's what I'm going to sort of cover in this particular lesson. Okay, so to get started, let me just sort of reset this. Okay, so my setup is fairly simple. I have a grid. Okay, I'll just start from top. So I have a grid and I did a remesh, and it's about 0.06. Okay, and then there is a sphere which I copied on a line, which I'm using to these will be the pins. Okay, like the geometry will be pinned here, and then I just sort of moved it up, and then for collision there is a pig head. Okay, so it's going to collide against this, and then I have a vellum cloth. This is default. There is no sort of modification to this as yet. We'll modify it as we go along. And then there is a pin constraint. So there's your pin constraint. And then there's a vellum solver. Like that's pretty much it. And I turned on the ground position for collision. So I'll just play through this. Now what I'm going to do is I'll have 2 of these so we can compare the settings. Okay, so I'll do a Control-C, Control-V, and I'll take a transform and just move it to the side so that we have like 2 of these, so we can compare if I make changes to it. Okay, so if I just play default, this is what I should get. So these are like your absolute basic, default settings that you're going to get with, with any piece of cloth when you apply it. Let me just do one thing. For now, I'll just get this to 0.1. So it's like, slightly less dense. It'll probably go a little faster. So the default cloth you get is relatively smooth. Like you don't get a lot of wrinkles in it. And especially once it sort of settles down, a lot of those kind of, disappear. So like starting from top, you can try to modify the density. Like the heavier it gets, like the more density you increase, you'll see that it sort of sags more. So if I get this up to 10, and if we do a comparison, if you're wondering about the viewport, I'm using a Matcap shader. I recently realized like you can actually use like Matcap in Houdini, so I'm using like a Matcap shader. So if you look at this, you'll notice like you're getting a lot more sort of sag here. Okay, like this is more straighter. So as the cloth gets heavier, so you're getting like more bends in the cloth. Okay, so you can sort of play around with density and see what you get. Okay, the other thing you can also do is you can try to lower the edge length scale. So which is going to like it's sort of like p-scale. It's defining the distance between each point. So the lower it gets, the more it allows the cloth to fold. So if I get it down to maybe like 0.001, which is pretty low, but it should give you, see, so you're getting like a lot more wrinkles here. Like this is a lot smoother in comparison. Like let me just go up to maybe 100 frames. So just modifying those 2, I don't think modifying density is a smart idea, but it works. Like it gives you, at the end of the day, you're worried about the visual like look of it. So if you want something a little more wrinkly, you can kind of, work with this. There are a few more methods, but if you want to go from like smooth to this, Like if I come into this cloth and I get the density down to 0.01, you will see the difference. Like at very low densities, it kind of smoothens out a lot. See, there you go. Like you have like no wrinkles at all in this. Okay, so modifying density is probably not a smart idea, but you get a result that you want. Okay, so that's like, one thing that you can do. Okay, now what you can also try with this is you can also try to work with the drag. Okay, so if I just let me try to reset, I'll reset this. You can right click here and you can say revert to defaults, and that will sort of take it back to the default values. So yeah, we're back to both of them looking the same. So what you can do is, let's say this one or this one, I'm going to take the drag. Yeah, and let's do one thing. Let's make it 100. So this should show you something interesting. Like it kind of adds like air resistance and it really slows it down. And it kind of like, instead of falling straight down and getting that tilt, it just falls like vertically. And you get a completely different result out of it. Okay. So you can see how slow it's gotten. And the way it folds becomes like totally different. So you combine this with, let's make the edge length to 0.001, and you should see a totally different result out of it. See, you're getting like a lot of folds. It kind of like just crumples together. See, I kind of realized I'd never really played around with these values, so I would never know. Like all my cloth would just look very, very smooth, so I finally decided, okay, like let's spend some time and go through these values. Okay. You don't really want to play with normal drag, but yeah, again, it's all about just, getting a look. Now let's do one thing. Let's just increase the resolution of this. So we'll go back to 0.06 and see what we get. Yeah, so there's your difference. Okay. Like a very high normal drag and a very low edge length scale gives you some pretty interesting results. And if you combine this, let's increase the density as well. So we'll make the density to around 20, and all three of those together should give you something pretty different. See, it actually falls faster. Like when the density was lower, when the density was like 0.1, it was pretty slow when it was falling. Like especially once it comes to that area, it becomes relatively slow. But once we increase the density, it tends to fall, like I guess the weight goes up, right? You're also getting a lot more folds in there. Yeah, so you can do, stuff. And if you're getting these, you can just apply a post process. Like we can just take a post process. So take a Vellum post process at the end, and I can just, give it a slight bit of spatial blur. That'll take care of it. There you go. See. But it is still sort of completely different from, like the default that you were getting before. Okay, let's get rid of this. So that's as far as, like the density and edge length scale and normal drag is concerned. Let's get the normal drag back to 10, which is the default value of it. And let's get this to 5. Okay, now another thing you can do in order to maintain the wrinkles. Okay, like let's get both of these to the same value. So we'll make this 5 and 0.001. So yeah, okay, so they're both the same value. So what you can do is, this is something I learned from this particular article, is there is a value called, which I'd never really tried, it's called compression stiffness. Okay, so what compression stiffness does is the higher it is, the more it sort of maintains the wrinkles. Okay, so just to come in here, if I come into this one, and you don't need to modify these two, just leave them alone. Okay, unless you want to do something very specific, usually you don't need to bother with, stiffness and damping ratio. Rest length scale is sometimes needed, but for now, we don't need to worry about these. Okay, so if I take the compression stiffness here and make it like 0.1, and with this one, I'll make it 1,000,000. And just that will give you enough of a difference for you to see what's happening. So if you have a very low compression stiffness, it smoothens everything out, as you're seeing here. And if you have a very high compression stiffness, it really sort of maintains the wrinkles a lot. See, so this kind of just, really smoothened it out in comparison to that. So I can't exactly tell you where you would want to use each one of these, but they do give you different results. So where you can try these. Maybe you can use this for like cling wrap or something. I don't know. You could try that. But yeah, when you want to do cloth that is very, very wrinkly and like silk or satin or whatever, or like chiffon as they're doing here, make sure your compression stiffness is high. Okay, 0.01 is too low. It's kind of stupid. But yeah, it gives you a different enough result. Yeah, but you can immediately see the difference. Even at like 100 and 1,000,000, there's like a pretty big difference. Well, 100 and 1,000,000 is a pretty big difference. Okay, now the last thing you need to do is you can also work with the bend stiffness. Okay, so if I keep this at 1,000 again, which is the default, let's keep both of these to 1,000. Let's see if they've gone back to where they were. So if you want to do cloth that is slightly harder, like maybe leather or something like that, then you can play around with the bend stiffness. Okay, so the higher this goes, like let's say if I make it around 1, okay, you don't like even anything over 1 would get a little too hard, but there you go. Okay, like this is at 1. Okay, so maybe it's like if you want to do something like leather, maybe you could work with this, or I think 0.1 should be fine. Yeah, there you go. So if you want to do like very thick cloth, like this is, the bend stiffness helps out. Okay, so I'll keep this to around 0.01 for both. And then the last thing you get is something called plasticity. So what plasticity does is it kind of, over a certain rate, it will start to sort of harden the mesh. What it's doing is sort of modifying the rest pose itself. Okay, so the initial rest pose was straight, but then what it does is it sort of adds to that rest pose. Okay, so you're basically like, if you want the folds to start getting harder, that's where plasticity comes in. So I'll just turn on plasticity on this one. So this is the default, which is like a threshold of 10 and a rate and a hardening. Okay. And not much of a difference. Okay. Okay, so what you want to do is, let's get the rate high. Okay, so we'll get the rate to about 50. And if you press play, you should start to see something happen. Okay, you can see a little bit of modification there, but not enough as yet. Okay, so let's get the threshold low. So it's basically like anything below this threshold will start to harden up. Okay, and then we need to increase the hardening amount, because hardening amount of 1 is too low. So let's get it up to 10, and that should give us a bit of a difference. Yeah, there you go. See, now that's gotten harder. Okay. Like now if I play it back, you'll be able to see the difference. See, like now it suddenly feels like it's plastic at that point. Okay, so a rate of 10 is pretty high. So get it to around like 3 or something. I think that should be okay. Yeah. So these settings they've sort of given for denim, where it's sort of like if you wanted to wrinkle and then hold that wrinkle. Okay, because otherwise it'll just smoothen out the minute it kind of unfolds. But if you wanted to sort of like fold up and then hold that wrinkle, you can play around with the plasticity settings. Okay, so let's try to lower the threshold and lower the hardening to see what we get. Yeah, see, so it's sort of like, it hardens the base shape. It's not trying to smoothen it out now. So maybe slightly higher. Let's try to do the threshold really low. So if you get the threshold too low, it removes the wrinkles altogether. It just becomes like, really stiff. Like if I take this and I make it like 0.1. See, it's sort of like it just, stiffened up the whole thing a little too much. Let's get the hardening to 10. See, like everything is gone now. So yeah, so you kind of want to play around with it, like keep the threshold around 1 and the hardening to around 2, and that will give you, it'll give you some wrinkles, but it'll sort of harden up the wrinkles in a way that will look more natural. And then lastly, what you can do is, which is generally a good idea, is the default values in the solver aren't particularly great. Okay, so a substep of 1 and constraint iteration of 100 is not good enough. Usually what happens is like as your mesh count goes higher, you start to notice like everything starts to get very droopy. That's because it doesn't have enough constraint iterations to sort of calculate all the iterations. So generally, like what they've even mentioned in this article is they've said keep it around like 5 and keep substeps to 2, yeah, and constraint iteration about 500. Okay, so we'll try to do that. So I'll just keep this to 2 and I'll keep this to around like 500. And I can press play. Hold on, I need to do for both. Yeah, hold on. 2 and 500. And let's do one. Let's get this to something like that silk or satin thing that we were trying out. So let's make the 0.0001 and this is fine. Okay. So this should hopefully get very wrinkly and that should be more stiff. See, that's interesting, right? Like it starts to harden up the wrinkles as it sort of, because of the plasticity. So you get some pretty interesting results overall. Yeah, it almost looks like a lava flow. Maybe you could use it for lava flow. I don't know. Yeah, it looks like, actually now it looks like a steer or a cow head, with like big horns. And this one has a beard. Yeah, let's try to lower the hardening a bit. So where is it? Yeah, let's lower the hardening to around 1. Let's increase the threshold to around 4. Okay, so I'll just run this. This is the final thing. Okay. So I'll do another video of this. I'll try to make like an actual shirt or maybe, something on like a bendy arm. So we can see how it reacts to, something like that. But the settings are pretty decent. Like, this should give you the results that you want. But yeah, the one rule that I kind of learned, which I had never really done before, was, increase your iterations and increase your substeps. Vellum likes it if the substeps are better. Yeah, hardening of 3 is pretty high. I think 1.5 should be good enough. Yeah, that's better. That's more interesting. Yeah, that could work out for denim. Let's try something, right? Yeah, so I recently found like this whole bunch of Matcaps that I've started to use. So if you want them, I'll put this link in the description. Okay, so this is like, you can download the 512 or the 256. It's pretty, there are at least like 100 in there that you can use. It's sort of like, if you don't know what a Matcap is, if you use ZBrush, then you know what, like, I can't really explain what a Matcap is. But what you can do is you can come into your shading and set this to Matcap and then press D, and then you can, if you come to material, you have like Matcap texture. So the default, it goes to this folder called program files, Houdini. You'll have it in Houdini pick Matcap. Okay. And you only get 3 by default. You have this thing called oil clay, which is this. Okay. And then you have like some kind of a metal. Okay. And then you have sort of a waxy. Okay, so these are the 3 defaults that you get, but you can also then just change. This is the folder that I had downloaded, and you get like a whole bunch in here, and you can just try out any one of them and see what you like. So this is, like, sadly they don't have any names. They're all just, randomly named. But yeah, you can just pick them up and, see what you like. Like this is very much like a facing ratio kind of a result, or there are a few that I like this one isn't bad. Like this gives you a nice result. And like further down, there were some interesting ones. Yeah, like this is the one I've been using a fair bit. And then you can sort of control the intensity of it as well. But yeah, I'll put the link to this down in the description. So it'll be, so you can just download it from there. All right, so that's pretty much it. So these are all the various things that you can modify to get different results for your cloth. Okay, so just as a final thing to kind of just reiterate, density, edge length scale, normal drag, compression stiffness is very important to maintain the wrinkles. And then you can control the bend stiffness to, again, decide how smooth or bendy it will be. And then you can use plasticity to control if you want to sort of harden up the wrinkles. Okay. Yeah, so hopefully these settings should be useful in your projects, and that's pretty much it.